Hi everyone, good afternoon. This is game-based learning on the front lines. My name is Brendon Trombley, and let's see if I have this working. I should be able to talk to you guys from behind the podium. I feel like this creates an artificial barrier, so perfect. Yeah, first thing I want to say is just thank you guys. Thank you to the conference organizers for generously bringing us out here to present. Thank you all for coming to see me speak to you. And thank you, year one game designers. I had a great time playing your games yesterday, and I look forward to playing year 2 and 3 games for the rest of the conference. So thank you for sharing those as well. Let me introduce myself a little more. My name is Brendon Trombley. I am a game designer, and I work for Institute of Play. That is my fancy bang guitar that I made on that Magnetron website. We all do that at our school. It's pretty fun. In case you want to tweet me, I'm at the Brendon. Feel free to follow, add me, talk to me. A little bit more about myself. I graduated from RIT, Rochester Institute of Technology. That's in upstate New York. I studied media design there. So it wasn't exactly a game design program, but I did learn many technologies and many kind of design literacies while I was at RIT. Since then, I've had about 6 years experience in the kind of educational or technology fields. The first 2 years I was in the kind of e-learning kind of industry, doing Flash interface and programming design. And for the last 4 years, I've been working with Institute of Play as a game designer. We are New York City based. I've been living in New York City now for the last 6 years. This is mostly limited to nature, food, big games. Which, interestingly, I don't know if you guys are familiar with, big games are games that take a large number of people, a large space to play. There are many, by many I mean like 3 conferences, festivals out in the United States that are all about big games. Come out and play in New York City and San Francisco, and also City of Play in Pittsburgh, and I've brought games to all of those. Parkour, adventure, cats. I also really enjoy social impact. That's why I chose the work that I do. I want to combine my love of games and the drive to have some sort of positive impact on the world. And so I feel like I found a very cool niche in this sort of community to really bring both of those passions to bear. Alright, so in my talk today, I want to cover these goals. The first one I want to do is to show you all what game-based learning looks like at Institute of Play, the company that I work for, and Quest to Learn, which is the school that we helped create in New York City. And in doing so, I want to share with you my years of experience now in that environment and tell you some of the design considerations that we have discovered for classroom environments. They are a very particular kind of place with a very particular kind of audience, and so there are some things that I think you would like to know in case you ever wanted to get into this kind of industry yourself. And as a continuation of that, I also want to give you guys some tips and strategies for being a successful learning game designer. This is a growing field. People are incredibly excited about it everywhere. That's why I get to come out to fly across the Atlantic Ocean to share this kind of thing, because people are excited about this and it's growing. But really, my biggest goal, I would say, is that I really just want to free your mind. I want you to come away with a different kind of understanding of what game-based learning is and what it can be. In my experience, I found that people have certain viewpoints and certain kind of preconceptions about what game-based learning is, and I hope to expand that perspective. And you can see that this field is not only growing in numbers of people, but it's also growing in kind of what it even kind of covers. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about Institute of Play. We are a non-profit design studio. We were founded in 2009 by a group of game designers, but now we are a much larger staff of both game designers, other kinds of designers, learning experts, data experts, everything that kind of is required to make a nonprofit in education and learning run. Let's see. This is kind of like our mission statement. We want to design experiences that make learning irresistible. And by irresistible, I really mean to increase engagement, to increase people's love for learning. This is what we're really going for. And the way that we do that is by putting at the core of our experiences games, play, and the principles that underlie games. That's a very, very important phrase for my talk, the principles that underlie games, because as you'll find, we're not just using games to teach, we are kind of breaking apart the entire concept of games and play and applying them in new ways to education. Our final goal in all of this is really to empower people to thrive as active citizens in a connected world. We want people to be agents of change. We want them to realize that learning happens not just in the classroom, it happens everywhere, and with a globally connected, data-based, internet-based society, with all that information accessible to us, our connected world is where much of our education happens, and it's outside of the classroom as well as inside it. So, like I said, Institute of Play founded a school called Quest to Learn. They are two separate bodies, but they're very, very closely related. So I am an Institute of Play employee. However, I do work physically inside of this school in New York City every day. I work with teachers, I work with students, I work with other staff members, and I work with my own coworkers from Institute of Play to create the kind of model and the vision of the school and make it successful. Oh no. There we go. So let me tell you a little bit more about Quest to Learn. It is a public school in New York City. That means it has no tuition fees. Its budget is taken care of by the taxpayers and the governments. And at the core of its model and its design is this concept called game-based learning. And like I said before, that doesn't just mean playing games, it means taking the principles that underlie games and applying them to the design of this school. There's a few other logistical things here. We are a non-selective school, which means they don't have to take any kind of tests to get into our school. All they have to do is rank our school #1 of their choice, because in New York City they have many, many choices for schools, even public schools. And they have to come to an open house, so that we know that they're invested and that also that they understand what exactly they're getting into when they come to our school. We are currently 6th to 10th grade. The way that the model works is that we have been opening a new grade every year since it's opened. So since we are in our 5th year, we have now 5 grades to teach. By the end of the kind of rollout process, we will have a 6th through 12th grade. That's complete middle school and high school in the American sort of system of education. Age-wise, that means they are about 10 years old through 17 to 18 years old. We have about 600 students, so that's roughly 100 kids per grade, slightly more. And we opened, like I said, in 2009, along with Institute of Play. This is a little bit of a math equation of how Quest to Learn came to happen. So Institute of Play is kind of the designer of the school, the sort of driving force behind its creation. However, without these 4 other organizations, it wouldn't have been possible. So New Visions for Public Schools is an organization that helps create new schools in the New York City area with experimental models and new ways of learning and teaching. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Mark Carter Foundation gave us generous grants to fund the work of the Institute of Play employees to make the designs happen. And of course, the New York City Department of Education, which this is a New York City Department of Education public school, and so they are, of course, very closely related to us. And so all of the teachers, students, principals, and staff members are all affiliated with the New York City Department of Education. That comes with it its whole array of not only budgetary advantages, but also a bit of a bureaucracy that the rules and the large system we are actually kind of part of. So yeah, when you add all these things together, you get Quest to Learn. Now, I said that Quest to Learn was game-based learning, and before I tell you a little bit more about what Quest to Learn is, I'm going to tell you a couple things about what it's not. Misconception number 1, that we are a video game school. This image is actually an image of our students, and it was taken by the New York Times in a New York Times article that came out in 2010. And as you can see, it depicts some of our students with sort of crazed, slack-jawed expressions as they're hypnotized by a video game, controllers in hands, and they're learning, I think. I'm not really sure. This might be, this vision of what school might look like, for some people, and maybe many of you in this room, this is almost like a dream. Oh my god, I can learn everything about video games. For others, it's a nightmare. I started as the first one, and these days I'm now kind of more of the second one. And that's because I've spent time in the education system in New York City and understanding kind of what that really means. So, to clear up this misconception, I just want to cover a few things. Our students, they still learn the same exact things that all New York City students are required to learn by the state. Their state mandated standards that we cover. They do actually engage in many of the same activities as normal students. They do tests, they do homework, they have lectures sometimes. But what we try to do is frame that experience within more game-based systems, and by creating real-life reasons for them to be learning what they're learning, creating what we call a need to know. We are hopefully, rather than saying, you must learn this because the state says so, because I say so, because authority says so, we want to motivate our students to learn because they understand why that information is valuable. And while I'm saying that this is not video game school, our students do play games. They play video games sometimes. However, overwhelmingly, they actually play board and card games. When I design a game, if I design a game for a teacher for our students, the turnaround time is maybe a couple weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, maybe 5 or 6 if I'm lucky. And I'm working with multiple teachers at once. It's almost impossible for me to make a full-fledged video game in that period of time. Not to mention, it's actually logistically a nightmare to do a video game rolled out with a classroom of 30 students. I'll cover a little bit more of those logistical things a bit later. Yeah, so that's covering most of misconception number 1. Let's move on. Misconception number 2, that we are school all about gamification a la 2009, 5 years ago. I can't believe it's 5 years ago now. Just so that we clear the air, when I say gamification a la 2009, I really mean batification and mortification. These are elements that we don't necessarily never use. We sometimes use these if appropriate, and this is a big part of our philosophy. We will take whatever philosophy or aspect of games that is acceptable for that moment and use it. So points, badges, whatever, they're essentially the little star sticker that the teacher pins in your chest and finger. It's not really that different. It's made out of pixels rather than a sticker. We use this kind of thing very sparingly, and our model is really so much more. So misconception number 2, we're not a gamification school in the sense of batification and mortification. If you want to redefine gamification as using the properties of games that using the properties that underlie games as a part of education, then sure, because that is what we're all about. Okay. Misconception number 3, that the use of games is somehow creates a magical transfer of knowledge into students, that by playing the game, they will suddenly know everything they need to know, and we're in like this magical fairy tale land, and that you can just simply plug yourself in and learn whatever skill you need to know. And this is what, many people in the educational world, and not the teachers actually, because they're very shrewd. People are trying to go into the educational world and be like, I've got the answer, I've got the magic bullet that's going to solve all education. And it historically happens time and time again. People get really excited, there's buzzwords flying everywhere, and then people suddenly realize, wait, no, we still have all these problems. This is not going to fix education. And games is yet another one of those things that, if you're not careful, you can kind of get this magical mentality that games are going to fix everything. And what it really does is create a disservice to certain people that are key players in the educational world, especially the teachers. They have a crucial role to play in this, and it would be doing them a disservice to not identify that. And so, if the game is not magical, it's not the magical transfer of knowledge, it's really important for me to show you guys how games are positioned and how we surround the games with other types of things and really deeply connect them to those other more traditional aspects of classroom practice, like testing and homework and lessons, and how they kind of come in and out and create a full-fledged, robust experience for our students. Okay, so if I'm not making video games, if I'm not making gamification, and if I'm not solving education with magical games, what am I even doing here? Right? Do you guys, I don't know if you think I'm just knocking everything down, all your hopes and dreams? Hopefully not. I want to tell you a little bit more about what my actual day-to-day looks like. And a really key part of that is what we call the curriculum team. So our school year is split up in the middle school into 2 trimesters, 3 pieces, and in the high school, 2 semesters, 2 pieces. And during those periods of time, I am put into several curriculum teams. We basically have 1 teacher for 1 subject and 1 grade. So like there will be like the 6th grade social studies teacher. So I might be placed with him, I might be placed with several other teachers into these curriculum teams. And that team is comprised of myself, the game designer, the teacher, and then also this other person called a learning designer. Now that is a Institute of Play employee who is not a game designer. What they are is an expert veteran teacher who really understands our philosophy and our model and serves as kind of a bridge between the other 2 people. Because we really do come from separate worlds. And so this team meets once a week or twice a week, depending on how new the teacher is to the school. And this is when we sit down and we plan out curriculum for that teacher's, semester. We will brainstorm games, we'll brainstorm classroom activities, we will think of technologies to integrate into the classroom. But it is very much 3 heads are better than 1 when it comes to education. This is a really, really great advantage that we have compared to many other educational environments when the teacher is almost alone in sort of this vast space. Maybe the principal comes in and observes them once in a while, but generally, teachers don't get the opportunity to collaborate, and they don't get the opportunity to collaborate with designers or other veteran teachers to really help them create the curriculum they want to create. So, we all have a role on that team. As time goes on, I've noticed these roles start to mingle a little more, but this is generally how it is. As the game designer, yes, I do create games, like I said earlier. But I also utilize a more broader design expertise. Since I'm an expert, in kind of the design process, I can model the prototyping and target audience and game and all those things that a designer can do. I can also create visuals, I can print them out, I can help the teacher make the classroom look beautiful, more game-like looking physically. I can also help integrate games that previously exist out in the world already. We don't have to create games from scratch all the time. If something is out there that is useful for us, whether it's meant to be educational or not, as the game designer, I should be the one who kind of has a vast knowledge of all the games that are out there, so that when we're talking about a specific learning goal, I can be like, oh yeah, that reminds me of this game. Let me show it to you like next meeting or something. The other thing I can do is integrate technology. I know many different technologies. I love learning new technologies. I'm also into that kind of thing. And so, once again, if there's a specific moment that's like, oh yeah, why don't we use this technology? I'll bring it in. I can show you and see if you think it's worth it. This means speaking to the teacher, and kind of ease that process. I found that teachers, and I'm going to talk about this more a little later. They have a very limited amount of time to do their work. They are, preparing lessons. They're grading homework and tests. They are not only teaching, but they're also dealing with many other administrative, bureaucratic things. Their time is really precious, and they don't usually have the ability to just kind of explore technologies. So that's what I get to do. I also teach the teacher. I try to help them take on some more properties of a designer, of a game designer, helping them think in that sort of same way that I do with the prototype and all those things. I can also teach them about technology. I can help them become more comfortable over time. And at the same time, I'm learning from the teacher. I'm taking on the properties of an educator myself. I'm learning about what this environment really is and what it feels like. And I'm learning about the tricks and the strategies and the considerations that teachers have to do every day to teach their students and to make all the various people happy. That's not just students, that's administrators, it's parents, it's governments. Okay, now I want to show you a quick video. This will give you a little more perspective into kind of how we do it, what we do with our work. Now this is you're going to hear this phrase mission lab a lot. Mission lab is what we call our office in the school, so that's actually where I'm based out of. Like my actual desk is in the room that we call mission lab. We also call ourselves mission lab staff, and that's how we differentiate ourselves from the other staff in the school. So I'm just going to play this.
Mission Lab is a design studio within Quest to Learn. It's comprised of game designers and curriculum designers, and we work with teachers at Quest to Learn to help them develop the curriculum and to design games that are played in the classroom. Part of what we do is to identify pieces of content that students tend to have trouble learning or picking up. And when those areas come up, we work as a team to brainstorm ways that we can design a game that will help kids to better understand and really learn and remember these content areas.
Mission Lab is something as a structure within a school that does not exist in any other school that I know of. The support that it gives teachers, I think, especially at a public school, makes it extremely unique. It's just a place where teachers can really be creative and are really encouraged to be creative with their curriculum, and also a space of collaboration.
It is an amazing experience because you not only have three heads working together, but you have three heads that bring such wonderful different knowledge and skills to the table that you end up with products that wouldn't have ever appeared if it was just three teachers working together, three curriculum designers, and three game designers.
The teacher obviously comes with the content expertise in terms of what is mandated to be taught, and then through group meetings and discussions with the curriculum developers and game designers, start to flesh out possible ideas and directions to go to teach the content.
The space that we offer is just like physically the kind of a necessary place for teachers to go to. It's not like a faculty room. It's a place where they can go and think, not just go and chill. And we are there to help them think.
In terms of knowing what the teacher wants to teach, I have some ideas in my mind already. But then the teacher comes up with something else, which is very close to that. So let's say, actually, I was thinking the same. Oops. Then I see, so we should at least try to prototype this idea and see what happens.
When the collaborative.
Okay.
So when I see that connection happening, like we're almost on the same wavelength, then I see, we should at least try to prototype this idea and see what happens.
When the collaboration works, it's more successful in the classroom because the teacher feels ownership over it.
You see kids excited. They're jumping out of their seats, they're yelling, they're talking about triangles and Pythagorean theorem, and you can just see the energy in the classroom. I call it controlled chaos. It is a lot of noise, but very specific noise geared towards learning goals. So it's this amazing time in a classroom where you know learning's going on at the same time that the students are having fun.
We're not just playing the games for no reason. We have like a goal in mind. So our goal for the day may be to learn like certain Spanish words. So like we played Clue once, but it was a Spanish Clue. And the object was to learn how to say different Spanish foods. So by playing the game, we were able to pick up the language and speak it by the end of the class.
At first, you're like, oh man, the second these kids hear game, their minds change and they start to, get excited, they talk, they don't listen as much. And that's true. And from a kid's perspective, every time they've experienced games, it's been in a more lax environment where, they're supposed to have fun, they're not worrying about rules or anything else. So as a teacher, it's your job to present the game in such a way that, yeah, we're having fun, we're learning, but at the same time, although you're enjoying this game, you're still in the classroom, and the ultimate goal is not only to have fun, but to learn what we're trying to teach you.
One of the things that gives games so much power in teaching kids is that games really encourage you to just keep trying. This seems like a perfect fit with when you're teaching kids, to teach them in a safe environment and encourage them to just try without fearing failure.
Oftentimes the teachers bring up ideas that we never thought of. And so it changes the direction of where we're going in a particular brainstorm, or with a play just of a game. The teacher's feedback may then shift the redesign of that game.
One block, you need to touch that one of your units. Or so if it's touching, then you can touch and use that.
Mission Lab is and our meeting times are prompts for teacher learning and teacher reflecting on their next steps and their long-term planning. It's very easy to get caught in the day-to-day as a teacher and planning for the next day, or maybe the next week, or maybe 2 weeks down the road, but we try to force the long-term vision. And while it can be a pain sometimes too, teachers do appreciate it in the long run.
There's sort of a trajectory to understanding the nature of the collaboration, and so teachers who have been here since the beginning are very protective of their relationship with the curriculum team. Curriculum meeting times are kind of like times that are never touched, unless they really have to be, and teachers that protect that more than anybody else does.
Games can be considered almost like a second language, universal language of the world, because those are experiences that a lot of people go through and they connect to, maybe in similar ways. And so there is already some kind of connection there. So if something is working here, I don't see why something like this wouldn't work in other places.
All right. Oops, there we go. Nope, no, not again. All right. So yeah, I think that gave you all a bit of more perspective into like what the day-to-day of the school looks like, what it looks like inside. As you can see, it has many attributes of a regular class learning school, but it also has some very unique things going on as well. I just want to talk about my last goal in this whole entire thing is to, over time, I need to make myself obsolete. Having a game designer in a school that's funded by grants has a limited lifespan. And so we've been realizing, especially over the last year and a half, that maybe the biggest impact that we have is really to empower teachers to do all the things that the game designers have been doing for the customer teachers all along. So, like I said earlier, I'm teaching the teacher and learning from the teacher. And by doing that, what I really hope to do is to help teachers become game designers and help them to really learn how to use technology and how to learn new technologies. And so our work moving forward is going to be a lot of what we call professional development for teachers. So we really want to empower teachers to do all these things. And that's kind of what our model looks like now for making the kind of work that we've done in Quest to Learn and the things that we've learned and expanding that beyond just the one school in New York City. And so this is kind of the last step in that process. All right, so let's talk a little more about why we do what we do. We live in a post-industrial society, and our educational system is still very much in the same kind of way that it was during the Industrial Revolution. Like these big classrooms, all students are kind of treated as like cogs in a machine. They're sort of the same. They're based on like age rather than difficult ability level. And the skills that they were teaching back then, were rote memorization, fact recollection, like learning formulas, and maybe those were useful at a time when people could make a living by working in a factory and like actually support a full family and all these things. But these days, all those jobs are disappearing from countries like the United States and I don't know about the industrial history of Sweden, but I'm assuming you guys don't have as much of it as you might have in the past. So what does our post-industrial society look like? What are the skills that are required to be successful? We believe these are these skills: creativity, innovation, collaboration, critical thought, proactivity, adaptability, tenacity. These are the things that we want to equip our students with so that they can be successful in this post-industrial society. This is one of the goals that we don't really have, and people tend to ask us this a lot. How do our kids do on test scores? Has our new experimental model increased the test scores? That's not really our goal. We want our kids to do well enough on the test scores so that they don't shut down our school, because that would be bad. But that's not our end-all, be-all. We're not trying to compete with the math scores from the students in other countries or other states or whatever. That's not what's on the forefront of our minds. And we're trying to work with teachers to also hopefully get that also off the forefront of their minds. So all these things, what we're really trying to do is to have students who are empowered to make that change in the world. We want them to be able to tackle the future head on and be the ones who are the movers and the shakers and the innovators of tomorrow. Because we have an unknown future ahead of us, just in the last 20 years, to think of how much the world has changed and how much more is going to change in the next 20 years while our current students come out into college and into the world. If you're not familiar with the concept of a black swan, I really like this idea. It's an unpredictable event which has huge consequences. It's a game changer. I would consider the internet to be like a black swan. 20 years ago, I had no idea it was going to become what it is today. The iPhone, when it first came out, was a whole game changer. In just a few short years, like the whole smartphone revolution has completely also changed the way that we deal with the world. What's the next one? I don't know. We don't necessarily know. And so how do we educate our kids to be prepared for that future? We're not quite sure what it's going to look like. Let's see. Go next. Oh yeah. In case you're curious, our kids actually do well on tests. So just in case it's really like burning a hole in your question minds. All right. So I told you I was going to tell you a little more about what game-based learning really looks like. This talk is called Game-Based Learning on the Front Lines. So, quick little flashback. We had Institute of Play, the core of the experience we designed our games play, and this time I changed the color and underlined there so to emphasize the principles that underlie games. So, we have 7 game-like learning principles. I'm going to take you through the 7 and just give you some examples of how they manifest themselves at Must Learn. I'm going to grab my notes while I do that. So number 1 is learning happens by doing. I tried to put these in kind of a nice order too, hopefully you agree. We want our students to, that's why I have my notes. Right, so let's talk about, before we talk about the classroom, let's talk about games. Of course, learning happens by doing in games. That's how you learn how to play, at least ideally, right? You don't really learn how to play a game by reading an instruction manual or like a how-to diagram. You learn how to play by encountering obstacles and kind of experimenting and based on what happens in the game, go, oh, yes, that worked, or yes, no, that didn't work, and continuing on. All the learning that happens because you're participating in that game, in that system. So how that translates into the school, I mean, this is an example that you see here of the culmination of one of our trimester-long pieces of study called the Incredible Chemistry Cook-Off. So this was actually, the science class was taking on the roles of chefs and cooks and bakers to produce, to create food, and at the same time, learn about chemical changes that are happening to the food as they cook it or mix it or whatever. So they're making real things, and they're showing, they're matching, the learning content about chemistry to the real thing that they're working on, that they can touch and smell and taste. And of course, they make a little science presentation and show it to everybody. So this is they had a big exhibition. They brought all the parents in. Everyone got to eat food and learn about the physical and chemical changes that were happening while they cooked that food. So like I said, learning by doing, a big part of it is by just kind of stepping into that role or identity of whatever it is applicable for that subject at hand. It just so happens so in chemistry, you can step into the role of a chef and learn chemistry a little bit. Our students also step into the roles of architects, urban planners, cartographers, of course like mathematicians, historians, scientists, but anytime we can do something that maybe is like a step removed and show them that linkage, it's got a really strong impact for the students. And yeah, really just dealing with real stuff is something that I've actually personally been much more interested in when it comes to working with the schools. Our 10th grade, 9th grade science class was working with real life organisms, these small water fleas, and that you get to look at them under a microscope, see their heartbeat. And so they got to try introducing new chemicals to their environment and see how that changes the heart rate. So caffeine would increase it, alcohol would decrease the heart rate. You can see that in real life. And that's such a better way to learn than just reading about it in a textbook. Moving on, everyone is participants. Of course, this is applicable in games because if you're not participating in the game, you're not playing the game. And so, just like so in school, we want everyone to be engaged and learning together. And they do so collaboratively all the time. Like I said, collaboration is a key skill for this future kind of student that we want to produce. And so we want to have group projects very, very often and have kids really learn the idiosyncrasies of collaboration early on. I know in my own college experience, a lot of those idiosyncrasies I did not encounter until college. So these kids are becoming collaborators much earlier than I'd say most students ever do. And we give those students like discrete roles within the groups: task manager, scribe, designer, presenter, all these things, so that the kids themselves have a specific role to be. So we're not just kind of jumping in and being like, just collaborate, we structure, thankfully. And the adults at the school, we also model this in our own work. We participate fully as well. That curriculum team is itself a model of collaboration. And so by modeling the things we want to see exhibiting in our students, we need to show them why that works and why it's important. Feedback is number 3. Feedback is immediate and ongoing. This is how you learn games. You try a thing, and your character might die or take damage. There's a flash of light. There's a hit point counter that goes down. The decisions you make in the game, the choices that you make, you usually very quickly understand the consequences of that decision. We want to, and so therefore you have a very clear representation of how you're doing the game. And that's very important for learners to have a clear representation of how they're doing in their own education. And also in just any activity that they're doing. This is an activity in which the students collaboratively build a Rube Goldberg machine. If you don't know what that is, it's simply a series of kind of events that are in a chain reaction to each other. And what they're trying to do is, build a certain number of steps to make a thing happen at the end, like pop a balloon or throw a piece of paper into the trash can. So I'm assuming she's probably dumping marbles into the pipe, they'll roll down a track, they'll do some other things. But of course, there's many possible points of failure here. And by being able to simply try it out and see if it fails, see if it succeeds, she's getting immediate feedback on as to whether her Rube Goldberg machine is successful, and she'll have a clear understanding of what to do to fix it. And yeah, so therefore, learners can easily adapt based on the feedback that they're receiving. Number 4, challenge is constant. I'm sorry for this kind of a messy slide, because of the diagram that I'm using here. Like I said, we build our curriculum in these units of study that we call missions. Each mission is either a trimester long for the middle school or a semester long for the high school. And what it basically is a big problem or problem set or challenge that the students are going to be required to complete by the end of that trimester. But they are not equipped with the knowledge or the skills yet to do so, and therefore must engage in the learning in the curriculum step by step in order to make the necessary progress towards completing that goal. So as an example here, BSD 6th grade trimester 1, by the way, BSD is sort of like our social studies humanities class. The standards, the New York State standards, require the students to learn about geography and the rise of civilization. And so we designed a mission that helps the students learn those things. So what we decided to do was to have the kids become curators, that's the role that they're stepping into, of the Springfield Museum. Now, in order to be a good museum curator, especially of history, you're going to need to exemplify all of the skills that we need here. So they're going to make a museum about basically demonstrating those skills in geography and civilization. A mission is divided into quests. Each quest is a smaller piece of study that has a specific kind of success state or deliverable piece of some kind that gradually gets them towards being that mission. So quest 1, they learn about maps. Quest 2, they learn about geographic landforms like peninsulas, islands, and distances. They play a game here in that part, by the way. And then quest 3, human geography. That's where they learn how human civilizations settle based on different geographical features like mountain, river deltas, and things like that. Once again, they play the game during that quest as well. And so, as you can see, that the challenge is constant is exemplified here because they're really dropped into a space in which they just don't have the ability to complete it just yet. And so they're kind of always pushing against that obstacle of I need to learn this and this and this and this in order to curate Springfield Museum at the end. Let's move on. Principle number 5, failure is Reframed's iteration. Possibly one of my favorites. And if you remember in the video, we touched upon this briefly. when you're in a game and you try something and fail, usually you are able to restart very, very quickly and get to a checkpoint or something and try again. You get to alter your strategy. You get to try new items or new strategies, and are able to then, over time, even if you fail many times, eventually overcome that challenge because you've been able to reflect on your strategy and iterate on it. So we try to exemplify that in our learning as well. And this is actually where we bring in a lot of learning around the big design skills. We want our kids to also learn to take on the habits of designers, to be prototypers and playtesters, and reflect on the experience of their users and create improvements to their projects. And what this does is reduces the fear of failure. In a traditional model of schooling, failure is the worst of the worst thing that you could ever encounter. You get a low grade, a low test score, you might get held back or whatever. And what that does is it almost causes this crippling effect in which students are no longer kind of willing to take risks or experiment. They need to play it safe. They need to make sure they have the right answer before they open their mouths, before they try something. And what that really does is stifle innovation and creativity. We want them to be, we want to increase their willingness to experiment, and by reframing failure as iteration, we can do so. I have to move on pretty quickly, actually. I don't have time. Everything's interconnected. Here's number 6. This is another card game that we have, in which there are many different historical concepts that the kids are required to map and explain why they're connected to each other. It's called Synapse. This is where we really have to bring in this idea of systems thinking. We want our kids to be able to look at the world and all the things inside the world as systems. The system is really just a series of interconnected parts. And we want our students to be able to see things as interconnected rather than isolated things in an ocean of isolated things. And what that does is allow our students to look at things in the big picture and to find leverage points in systems to be able to put a small amount of change or a small amount of input to make a greater change in the world. And that's how we can enable our students to become agents of change, by identifying those leverage points, by looking at the big picture, by looking at the world as a series of systems. By the way, our kids also engage in game design because games are systems, and the games are an incredibly straightforward way to help them start learning about systems as they do in 6th grade. Lastly, learning feels like play. This is once again where the experimental thing comes in. We want our kids to be able to feel like they can play, experiments, and of course they do play games. They do get to learn with different technologies and different kinds of experiences. Okay, so now that I've told you a bunch of really, hopefully exciting, cool things, I want to slap you in the face with a dose of reality. Alright, so this is actually the section of my talk where I'm giving you design considerations for a school. So while this might sound a little negative or a little defeatist, really the point here is so that you can understand these things, so that if you do decide to design for an educational environment, you'll be keeping these things in mind, because it's very important. So, one of the biggest conundrums in education is the fact that we can't read minds. I can talk. I can't look at your brains and know whether you've learned what I want you to learn. And the same is for teachers and their relationship with students. This is why assessment is such a big deal. This is why standardized testing is a big deal, and it's incredibly important. So when you're making games, you can't just make a game and sort of trust that the kids are going to learn. You really have to figure out how do you prove that. This might be part of the game. This might be part of something surrounding the game. We do a little bit of both. The other thing is that data is incredibly important. Teachers have to do both. They have to do both like formative assessment and summative assessment is what the words are called in education. Formative assessment is when you can simply observe the kids while they're doing their activity or they're learning and make a judgment call. What do you think? Summative assessment happens afterwards, and that's kind of like what a test is, right? It's kind of sums up the learning at the end. The reason the data is so important is because there are, that's how decisions are often made in the world. You look at the data, and if the data says it's successful, then you get to keep running your school. So that's how that works. So yeah, as it links to assessment, we, at least in the United States, are dealing with testing. We're at the end of our school year now, and This is supposed to be trimester 3 where our teachers are doing their last mission of the year, and every single teacher I'm working with, their mission has been minced up and chopped up by all the testing and all the other things that are happening at the end of the year. And it's not just like the kids have to sit down and take a test. Some of our students, or some of our teachers also have to go be out for a whole week to grade tests across the city. The kids have to do make-up tests if they missed it. The whole 2 months of May and June, and I think some of April, have been almost annihilated because of all this. And related to that, like I said earlier, a teacher's time is so scant and precious to them that if you're creating a solution for education and you're not keeping that in mind, the teachers are probably not going to use it, and they're really the final shot callers of whether a piece of educational technology or game is used. So if you're not respecting their time, if you're not making things really accessible and easy for them, they're probably going to skip it and move on to something that's much easier. Similarly, classroom time is scant and precious. Children come in late. They take a while to settle in. You have your mind warmers, you have your transition periods, you have all these other things. Even if class period is 45 minutes, it's possible that the active time, the actual teaching time, is like 30 minutes. You still have to explain to them what they're doing today. You still have to, collect all their work. And when you actually think of how much time in a class period is actual teaching, it becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. Another dose of reality is the students themselves. I love them to death, and sometimes they drive me insane. I can imagine, and for me as the person who doesn't necessarily interact with students all the time, I can only imagine how it feels for the teachers. We deal with large class sizes, and classrooms are really too small for them. Well, when you want to do a big active activity, how do you deal with that? What if you want to bring in equipment, like cooking equipment? How do you fit all that, including all their bags and jackets and bodies and desks and chairs, And amongst those 30 kids, it's not like they all are at the same ability level. You might have kids who are really, really far behind. Maybe they're even at like a second grade reading level in a high school class. And in the same class, you might have kids who are at a college reading level, and they can, just run circles around, of the work that you're presenting to them. Differentiation is an incredibly tough thing to tackle. Of how do you meet the needs of all of those students in the same classroom? The other thing you might have to deal with are behavior issues. And this isn't just like, the kids have something wrong with them. You can't think of it that way. And often those behavior issues, maybe they're rooted in if it's not properly differentiated and the kid's bored, but maybe the kid has something going wrong in their home life, or it might even be as bad as they didn't have enough to eat. Their parents they're working too many jobs, and the kid has to take care of themselves and feed them. They're not feeding themselves properly. Whatever it is, those behavior issues are present, and they might be out of your influence. So to sum all these things up, school is messy and chaotic and ever-changing. So how do you deal with that? It's really tricky, but you have to understand that that's the truth before you can learn how to sort of tackle those problems. My favorite one. I just look at this and the rage builds up inside of me. At least in New York City, we deal with this all. This is what we deal with. Useful websites, including an entire category around games, are blocked by the proxy that has been set up by the New York City Department of Education. There's a bureaucratic series of red tape and hoops that you can jump through to get things unblocked, but that's not necessarily worth your time all the time. We have to deal with this on a daily basis. The other one is that our model isn't really perfect. Like I said, we have to exemplify that lack of a fear of failure. Anytime something doesn't work, we consider that an opportunity to iterate. I would say that in our 5th year, we've improved a lot. But there's still things that could be changed. There might be ways to make the curriculum more game-like, and even integrate more video games without sacrificing all the things that you need to sacrifice. I'm not really sure, but that's what we're working on. About 10 minutes left. We should do okay. I'm going to run through a couple tips for you guys, and then I'll be ending soon. Keep in mind the double bottom line problem that you have. When you're making educational games, you have to make something that's both fun and learning. If you sacrifice one of them, you do not have a product that is worth using in the classroom. If it's not fun, the kids aren't going to engage in it, they're not going to learn. And if they're not learning, the teacher's going to think it's not worth it, and they're not going to use it. A really great example, I wish I had more specifics, but this can still happen within the game itself, in the sense that if you're so focused on like your content and you like maybe lack putting into sort of some funny, silly elements, like for instance, that Synapse game you saw earlier, it was all about like, historical concepts. That game also threw in things like Justin Bieber or whatever into it, like allowing the kids to make connections with things that are familiar with them, things that are kind of funny and goofy. It's going to increase overall engagement. It's also going to increase overall learning. So fun and learning, double bottom line, incredibly important. I think I've probably rehashed this talk a million times now, but just a game does not solve education. You have to be mindful of all the things that take place in the classroom and all the things that will surround your game to make it a worthwhile tool for the teacher. And like, if you can do this in your work, I'm very lucky that it's sort of like a structure. I have this meeting time set up, but if you're trying to make educational games and you're not working with a teacher, I severely doubt your chances of success. You need to have access to it, especially if you can, a teacher who's teaching the content that you want to teach in your game. Perhaps it even gives you access to do playtesting within the classroom. That's incredibly important as well. And of course, other educational experts are important too, especially the ones like that I work with, who are really bought into the whole idea of game-based learning, but they also deeply, deeply understand education. And having close relationships with those people has helped my growth and helped my work immensely. In line with teacher time, any tool you make, any technology you use or make has to be highly accessible, and it's worth readily apparent to teachers. That might mean you create a quick little video that explains how your product works. That also means that, like logging in and accessing information or accessing the game itself is a very seamless, easy process. Simplicity and elegance is king. There may be exceptions to this rule, but in general, don't ever try and tackle too many things at once in your games. Don't try and first of all, don't try not to focus on content. If you want your kids to learn all the states or the countries in the EU or something, or learn the history of each one of them, that's probably not for your game. That's probably for something outside the game. Try to focus more on skills and meaningful understandings, and then focus on that so hard. Ruthlessly remove features that do not meet that goal. And also, of course, build fun. That's what's important as well. Strive to create flexible tools. This is a mistake I see happening often in the educational games world, where the experience that a student goes through is a very prescripted kind of process. Maybe you have to go through the levels in sequential order, and what if a teacher only wants the students to experience level 5 and you haven't given them a tool to get them quickly to level 5? The teacher's not going to use your tool. This also means that this also actually goes quickly into this, which is giving teachers and learners the ability to generate content themselves. And so that would be a teacher to create a level for their students that is specifically designed for them, or the students themselves to generate an assessment artifact, something that the teacher can collect and to see whether they understand it or not. I have a really good example of a game that does this, and what games conference in Sweden wouldn't be complete without mention of Minecraft. One of my favorites, actually, and it's a tool that we've used in many classes and many domains at our school because it really, really exemplifies this. Students can create things in the game that meet learning goals for the teacher, and teachers or game designers can create experiences for the teachers within the space of Minecraft. Very straightforward. Understand this. Learning happens everywhere in a student's life. This is the idea called connected learning, and I mentioned this earlier, that students are learning on social media, on the internet, amongst their friends, doing their activities outside of school. And so school is really just one small aspect of all the learning that happens in a student's life. If you can understand that, you might realize that your game is better positioned outside of the classroom. I don't know. You have to keep that in mind. Okay. So I have a couple next steps for you. If you want to get into this a little more. Do your research on education. I've told you some things. There's so many more things to learn about. And it's going to be really important for you to understand the educational world if you want to get into educational meetings. We have a number of resources on the Institute of Play website. I didn't put a URL there, I'm sorry, but instituteofplay.org. Poke around, you'll find some things. Or if you want to come to me directly, I can share you some resources. The third one, become a better designer. Capital D underlined. this doesn't mean a game designer. This means the more general concept of a designer. Whether you're an industrial designer, a web designer, a game designer, there are a series of skills that are core to all of those, and the more you strengthen those, the better game designer you're going to be, and the better you're going to be at meeting complex needs of teachers and students. And that, a game designer does many of those things. They do the design process of prototyping and iterating pretty naturally. They generally do pretty well considering their target audience, although I can definitely see some need for improvement amongst that, and from game designers in particular. So a lot of things like that. And I actually have a couple of books that would be good for that. The Art of Innovation, Tom Kelly. This is that explains the design process at IDEO, which is a celebrated design firm. Design Everything by Tom Brendon. It really gets into things about ergonomic usability, affordances. And then Steve Prude's Don't Make Me Think. This one's about web usability, which actually has nice applications to games, because a game and a website have some similarities in terms of interfaces and things that you need. It's going to teach you a lot about really how to view your audience and how to create games, create things that are just more usable and communicate so much more to the user when you have these skills. Oh my gosh. I'm done. Thank you. So according to the schedule, I have exactly 1 minute for questions. I apologize for that. Okay, cool. I'm gonna come out of the light level so I can see you. Hi. Hey.
Blending science and art is something that the Western world have been missing. Do you think the results will win over other non-gamificated schools in the area? Because the biggest intellectual discussion about this will be if you are able to create a culture of people that can replace the current.
I'm not sure I understand what the question is.
Do you think these people will actually be able to beat other non-gamificated schools?
The people that like to combine science and arts?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't touched upon it about our work, but we do very much believe, and this is into everything interconnected, is that kids are going to learn better when you combine different domains together. I said ESP is a humanities class, but in actuality, it's both humanities and an English learning arts class. We don't necessarily have a science and art class. However, we do try to incorporate art into many of our domains.
We do have games, and we see games as art, and you do have games.
Yeah,
incorporated in every curriculum.
It absolutely is, and the question of games being art is very much we believe 100% that games are art, and in the class where kids learn game design, they're kind of touching upon a lot of that.
Yeah, but do you think they will actually be in what we rank as intelligence on other non-gamificated schools, like regular schools?
I think that this is the start of a lot of changes, and I think that the more and more people learn about the work and the ideas behind this work, things like that will definitely, I fully expect things to spread and change as time goes on. And hopefully we'll have a part in that. All right, thank you.